Welcome to Bethesda. In this Maryland suburb, 29% of homes cost over $1 million. Both its high schools are in top 15 in the state, and its downtown area is famous for its amenities. Skipping a neighborhood over to Silver Spring, we find less than 2% of homes cost over $1 million. The 6 high schools have an average rank of 62, and its residents are twice as likely to become a victim of crime than anywhere else in the state. Since everyone knows that some neighborhoods are better than others, why does this matter? Well, less than 14% of Bethesda residents are Black or Hispanic, but it is more than 44% in Silver Spring.
Even in a place like Montgomery County that are almost exclusively highly affluent, predominantly white, and you've got neighborhoods that are much less affluent, predominantly Hispanic, African American.
4 events in the history of federal housing policy explain why the same disparity exists between neighboring communities across America. When the Federal Housing Administration began insuring mortgages, neighborhoods with non-white residents were redlined as hazardous. Over its 30 years, only 2% of the loans from the National Mortgage Association went to non-whites. Congress funded the National Highway System, but it cut through minority neighborhoods. So, while the Fair Housing Act outlawed housing discrimination, the historical loss of intergenerational wealth has had a permanent impact.
In fact, a statistic that we talk about a lot at the Urban Institute is that the homeownership rate for African Americans is actually less or just below what it was after the passage of the Fair Housing Act.
The late 20th century, it started to become clear that simply prohibiting formal discrimination was not going to be enough to reverse the patterns of socioeconomic as well as racial segregation that had been created by a long history of discriminatory practices.
The reason that Bethesda and Silver Spring remain segregated and minorities have such a hard time building housing wealth is that local governments have kept affordable housing out of wealthier white neighborhoods using exclusionary zoning laws, which only allow single-family homes and not duplexes or triplexes to be built in these neighborhoods.
If there is a zoning law, for example, a single-family zoning law, where a family cannot move into a home unless they can afford a single-family home, they are concentrated into what people may call quote-unquote ghetto or the hood, which then limits them and traps them.
In other words, the only way for many families to start building housing wealth is to first purchase a living unit in a duplex or triplex. But this only works if they can buy a home in a good neighborhood.
They should consider reforming some of these laws. Said it can add 25-30% of the cost of a home. That is very sizable, and it needlessly does price some people out of the marketplace.
But why should a teenager who lives in Bethesda care about exclusionary zoning?
As a teenager, you have to care about this because even if you're not thinking about buying a home, I'm sure you're thinking about where you want to go after high school. Exclusionary zoning makes it very expensive for you to be able to afford a good home, especially if you're going to have student loan debt after paying for college. So as a teenager, this fight is your fight just as much as it's my fight.